you start talking about public relations in Washington, D.C., you can't be talking about but one man. You call him the czar, the godfather, or whatever, but this is the man when it comes to public relations. He's a native Washingtonian. Guy went to the D.C. public school system. You know, he got his start in a very peculiar way. He had to leave town, but when he left town, he ran into some friendly fire, some people that he knew his heroes when he went to Florida, and we're talking about the Washington Senators. He got his first start down there while he was interviewing ball players. The owners came up and found out that he was a native Washingtonian and said, how about coming to Washington? We need a public address system guy to do our ball games. And of course, that is a hell of a way to start with the Washington Senators. This guy has been in the business almost 50 years. He started here with the Legg Mason, it was the Washington Evening Star tournament back in 1970. It started in 1969. And I'm talking about, like I said, a guy who's been a class act for many, many years, the one and only Mr. Charlie Brockman. How you doing, Charlie?
Thank you. That was very nice.
Hey, man, I want my payoff.
You deserve it.
Charlie, you know, we're looking at 30 years ago. You and I were here. I came 3 years after you when Arthur Ashe first won this tournament, the first African American to win this tournament. Arthur Ashe's impact on the pro tennis game from your ringside seat.
Spectacular. He would do anything and everything to entertain the fans, to get the kids involved with tennis. I had a situation, many of the folks that are viewing us knows the name Ken Rosewall. He's a Hall of Fame tennis player from, the Wimbledon days and such. And Arthur Ashe, they were playing here at the Star Tournament. It was a semi-final match, and the promoters wanted to get the people involved, activities.
Right.
And so they said, Charlie, can you come up with something? And I said, tennis, unlike any other sport, perhaps unlike baseball or football or basketball, you can't root and cheer for your favorite athlete. Why don't we try and encourage them to do it? And they said, okay, we love that idea. Ask Arthur if he'll do it. I asked Arthur. First thing he said was, it's never been done, Charlie, and the traditionalists aren't going to like it. But if you want me to do it, I'll do it. I says, absolutely. I went over to Ken Rosewall and said, Ken, would you do it? He says, absolutely not. No way I'm not going to do that. And I said, but Arthur said that he would do it, and he thought it would be entertaining for the fans. Ken Rosewall says, well, if Arthur said it, I don't want to go against him because he's a really nice guy. So, okay, let's do it. But I don't agree with it, and I don't like it. Arthur won the match, and Ken Rosewall didn't speak to me for 2 years.
Charlie, the National Junior Tennis League, that started here, didn't it?
That's
Tell us
exactly
about
right.
that and the involvement of young people, getting young people involved.
One of the things about tennis, you can play it at all ages. The National Junior Tennis League, right here in Washington, and we're not talking religions and race, we're talking about kids playing a game. One of the things that you learn is you learn how to lose as well as learn how to win. And that's good for an individual. And so we started with, literally, like you start with just a few kids, and then a few more kids, and then more adult volunteers moved their way into New York, up the East Coast, down the East Coast, across the country. It's the largest junior tennis in the world. It's marvelous. And of course, Arthur Ashe was right in the middle of that.
Right. Arthur Ashe won over 800 games, matches, or whatever you want to call it. He won 3 Grand Slams. You're talking about an impact player. That's an impact player. But also, Arthur was had a little rebel in him. They started the ATP. Several of the pro tennis players got together and started the ATP ATP. Tell us about that and how that came about.
Well, what happens, this was in the open era. This was in the 50s and 60s. And basically, the tennis players themselves says, wait a second, we're the product, we're the performer, but we're not being paid enough. We can't say where we want to play or when we want to play. There's somebody above us. Somebody's always got a boss. And so, hey, tennis player, tennis player, tennis player, why don't we form our own union, if you will, and let's we're the performers, we're the ones that people come out to watch. And so they tried to put something together, and in fact they did put something together, but because of the officials in the tennis world, they were at odds with each other for a while, and then they sat down across the table and worked it out better for both.
All right. Now, all these big salaries we see today is because of that, of the ATP and Arthur Ashe and that group.
That is exactly correct. It's just like Billie Jean King and the women's tennis. When she first started, she admits that nobody was paying women tennis players anything, and she created a team tennis concept. She, like Arthur, was the foundation for building professional tennis. They are to be applauded, and I mean, when they were doing their thing, they were not making money.
Money, right, that's right.
Today, most of the young tennis players recognize that they were the leaders of where they are now. But I'm sorry to say that there are some young tennis players that
Don't have a clue.
don't have a clue.
Don't have a clue. Now here it is 30 years later, and we're talking about blacks, African Americans, or whatever you want to call us, but this has been a worldwide game. And I see, even though 30 years later, we still only have one black participating in the leg mason. What is happening? Are our programs working, Charlie, or what?
Well, the way I see it is that this is done on an ability. It's we don't choose this guy, or that guy to come in.
Right, that's right.
If you're the best, then you come in.
Right.
And I'm surprised more and more African Americans are into tennis. And what happens is that they're getting higher and higher in the tournament world, and that's why they're starting to play. I think they've just literally broken the ice.
Right.
They're just starting. It's like the Tiger Woods for golf. The African Americans, especially in the Washington, D.C. area, we should have half the field African American.
That's right.
It'd be perfect.
That's right. Charlie, tell us a little about James Blake, the lone participant that's participating in the leg mason and is going to take on Andre Agassi tonight.
Anybody who takes on Andre is in for a heap of trouble. Andre is spectacular. Let me tell you, when we start talking about this young man who is going to play the #1 tennis player in the world, he played last night like he was the #1 player in the world. I couldn't believe his shots. He has to get out fast. He can't get 2 or 3 games behind. He's going to lose his own identity and his confidence in himself. And Agassi will just run roughshod right over him. So he's got to start fast.
Andre Agassi is one of the most disciplined athletes that I've ever seen. This guy, and talking about remaining focused, I don't think anyone can remain focused as well as Andre Agassi.
You're 100% correct. Here is a fella, he's an athlete, he is a performer, he's a spectacular athlete in that he keeps himself in condition, he eats right, he works out right, and you're saying that here is a guy who knows his abilities and he just doesn't take it for granted. He works and works and works. I saw him out here playing against his wife. she's still spectacular.
Uh,
It's wonderful.
yeah,
I mean,
that's fantastic.
she is so good. He is so great.
Right.
You know what's happening? Even Roddick or Agassi, they're playing professional competition here. The problem is the competition is really good players, but they're on another level, another plateau. They're not good players, they are spectacular players.
Right.
And they don't even make some of the matches exciting.
Right.
So it's wonderful to be out here, and it is a great
Well,
game.
Before I let you go, I want to, I've asked a whole lot of people about Arthur Ashe. A lot of them don't remember that he won this tournament 30 years ago. So I think it would be a great service tonight if you remind people that Arthur Ashe won this tournament 30 years ago. We're celebrating 30 years of Arthur Ashe and his impact on the tennis world.
He also won the hearts of the people who come to watch tennis.
Right.
He was just one wonderful human being who happened to be a terrific tennis player.
All right. Well, you heard it from the legend himself, and you're talking about legends of inside sports. This is a legend here because just last year I honored him with a Lifetime Achievement Award from Kids in Trouble, and this is a guy that truly deserves it. So until next time, I'm Harold Bell with the great Charlie Brockman.
Thank you, Harold.
Okay.
Andre, Charlie Brockman and I was discussing today that he was saying that James Blake had been playing from behind in his previous games. And one of the things Charlie said, well, he can't afford to get behind with Andre. You fell behind and played the role that he played. You rolled back. How difficult was that when he...
Yeah, well, it's key because a guy like James, we're both tough front runners. He has so much athleticism out there and such a powerful game that when he starts really letting it go, it's tough to stop. And the only time you can keep him in check is if you're on top of him. And then he can't take necessarily those same level of risky shots he's playing. So it was important for both of us to get off to a good start, and he certainly answered that question. He got off to a better start tonight. Was in complete control of the match, and then I just managed to get back into it.
Well, Arthur was one of the greatest champions to ever play. The way he conducted himself as a person out there on the court, handled himself with dignity, with respect, always respected others, and accomplished more off the court. Sort of showed everybody what it means to be a humanitarian and paved the way for not just athletes and not just tennis players and not just athletes, for all people. Just sort of ask themselves, how can I give more? How can I be more? He was a great inspiration to me personally, and I know I can speak for a lot of people that he was a great inspiration to them.
He set the table for the salaries of the ATP when the players formed the ATP back in '69, and I think a lot of players probably remember him for that because he was able to bring the money to the players and brought to the game like yourself.
Yeah, he always stood for the right things, and he was a good man to be a peer with. I'm sorry I missed it.
Thank you. All right.
James, you played from behind last couple of matches that you had, and everybody was saying, James can't afford to play from behind on Andre. And you stepped to the plate and came out, blasting like Andre said. And all of a sudden he roared back like you did the night before.
Yeah, like I said, I came out playing as good as I could, and can't answer. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I came out playing those first 3 games, and I knew we win that many points in those, and I knew it wasn't going to go that way the whole time, but I had to try to keep my level up, and I did. I felt like I really kept my level at that consistency, playing some of my best tennis, but instead he just raised his level a little bit above mine, and that's why he's still #1 in the world. And I don't know, one of these days, the laws of time gotta keep getting there. He's 38, maybe I'll be able to be. I don't know.
I asked you last year the same question. I said, James, are you going to when you will start coming to the net because of your serve, such a big server and quickness that you have? And you said, Harold, gradually that would take place.
Yeah.
And I watched you play with your brother in doubles, and your net play is definitely improving. You see coming to the net, maybe in the U.S. Open, going to the net more?
Yeah, definitely, but I also, I have a plan A going into the match, and then you end up having to adjust it depending on who you're playing sometimes.